Cool. So we're picking up with Job 24 tonight. Remember Job 23, Job was talking about how these things that were happening in his life, he concluded it with, he will come forth as gold, right? Because through all these trials, he's going to be purified throughout. He'll come out the other end better, right? Now, this chapter is like almost the exact opposite of that for truly wicked people. So Job in the previous chapter was talking about how righteous people suffer in this life, and then but at the end of it, at the end of those sufferings, ultimately when we're with the Lord, we're good, right? Well, now he's going to talk about how seemingly the wicked prosper in this life, but ultimately their end is destruction. And so, and Job is in the midst of talking about, again, how he can't understand these things. He doesn't understand why this is all happening, but he still has faith in God, knowing that at the end, everything's going to be set right. Okay? So, righteous people, in the end, when it's all said and done, they're going to be good. And wicked people, when all is said and done, they're going to suffer, right? Ultimately, those who are saved and who are not, right? So, now getting into Job 24, Job explains the conduct of the wicked. This is actually a pretty interesting passage here at the beginning of this, because Job is in complete agreement with Eliphaz on what wicked people look like. He's just not in agreement that he's one of them, right? And so Job talks about here what wicked people do. And this should sound familiar because, again, this is what Eliphaz has already been saying, except Eliphaz was accusing Job of this. So it's kind of interesting. Job's like, I agree with you that wicked people do this stuff, right? And so, starting verse 1 here, it says, "Since times are not hidden from the Almighty, why do those who know him see not his days?" So those that know God, right? They're not included in the plans, is what he's saying. Why are we left in the dark about this? Then he says here, now he's talking about wicked people. Some remove landmarks. They seize flocks violently and feed on them. So this is kind of an interesting verse. In today's world, how do you know property lines? Well, usually you look on Google Maps or what?
Survey sticks.
Okay. Survey sticks. I was going to get there, but a lot of people, you want to see for sure your property or whatever, you look on Google Maps and you can see your property line, right? Like I'm young. So, but the survey sticks, yes. This is the same as what Job's talking about with these landmarks, right? And so the landmarks are, even if you don't have a fence, they would put a nail in a tree or something like that. Actually, that was a common thing at this time. If there was a tree, they would put a nail in that tree and be like, this side of that nail is your property, this side of it is mine, right? And so those would be some things, and or they would plant some trees along the property lines, or they would do something to mark those. And so that's what was called a landmark, right? So you think about it, right? That makes perfect sense of what it's called. It's kind of interesting. We talk about what makes a true church, right? The landmarks. What are the landmarks? When we say that we're landmark churches, right? What are we talking about? We're talking about the doctrines. So that's what marks us as true churches, right? Is the doctrines. Okay, and so this is kind of an interesting, he's talking about literal landmarks here, but it's brought to my mind, right, the fact that, when people say we're landmarkers, right? And so that's talking about the doctrines. Then it says here, they seize flocks violently and feed on them. So why would these people remove landmarks? Well, if you don't take that landmark, your sheep are on my property. Right, and then they take them. Right, I was watching the show Yellowstone. I know it's it's a good show. Anyway, it's a bad show, but it's a good show. But we were watching it, my wife and I, And they're one of the seasons, I think it's towards one of the earlier seasons, they purposefully cut the fence and the cattle went onto the other guy's property, and they said, nope, now they're our cattle. You can't take them back. And that it's kind of a difficult thing to fight. And so, but anyway, this is what they're doing here, right? They're seizing other people's flocks by removing those landmarks. And so, and it's kind of interesting when you had property like this, right? If you've had it for generations, sometimes people forget exactly where the lines are. So if you can remove those, who's to say where the line's supposed to be, right? And so anyway, so that's what it's talking about here. These are really acts of greed, right? And so exactly what Eliphaz was accusing Job of, Job is like saying, yes, this is a sinful act. Taking things away from other people, obviously, is a sinful act. Job's not saying I did this, right? He's not saying that he did this, but he's saying that this is true, that this is an act of a wicked person. And it says, they drive away the donkey of the fatherless. So they're driving away assets from orphans, essentially. Okay? So basically, they're doing terrible things to the most downtrodden people. It's the same thing here. They take away the widow's ox as a pledge. And so you think about this, right? If you were in debt to me, right? And say I'm some landowner and you're in debt and your husband dies. Well, I'm supposed to show some grace with some of that stuff, but instead these people, what these wicked people would do is, no, I'm going to go take your ox away from if you're a widow, right? That's what he's talking about here. So basically, instead of helping you when you're suffering, I'm going to make it worse, right? All out of greed here. And so it's the same thing when he's saying taking away the donkey from the fatherless. He's saying the same thing for both of those. They push the needy off the road, and all the poor of the land are forced to hide. And so another thing at this time, where would needy people beg? Usually where travelers would frequent along the roads, right? So instead of going to give them money, they go and push them off the road, get out of the way, right? So all the poor of the land are forced to hide. So again, just these wicked people going after the poor instead of helping them. And it says, indeed, like wild donkeys in the desert. I don't need to tell you how that would translate in today's language, but I think we all get it, right? Okay, I see some people. They're not nice people. Some, if you, all right. They go out to their work searching for food. The wilderness yields food for them and for their children. Okay, so what this is saying here, now he's kind of shifting. He's not just talking about like what the wicked people are doing, but they go out to do this stuff, and are they starving because of it? No. Do they get what they need? Yeah, it seems to be, right? The wilderness yields food for them and their children, so they're not starving, right? Then it says, they gather their fodder in the field and glean in the vineyard of the wicked. Do you remember the story? It's Ruth and Boaz, right? Where they're gleaning from the fields. They're supposed to be just taking what they need, right? These wicked people that already have what they need, what are they doing? Well, they're also doing that, right? They're also just taking from people. And so then it says here, they spend the night naked, without clothing, and have no covering in the cold. They are wet with the showers of the mountains and huddle around the rock for want of shelter. I believe that this is talking about the needy here that are being taken advantage of. But now, what else do they do? This is going on into the next section. They oppress the weak. And so the wicked, they're committing these acts of greed. And like I said, Job is agreeing with Eliphaz on all of this. And it's hard to get through some of these because this is Hebrew poetry here. So not all of this translates perfectly. But now he's continuing. And then this is Job gets even more extreme with this, right? Some snatch the fatherless from the breast and take a pledge from the poor. And so, what do these wicked people do when they need workers? What is he saying there? He says they snatch the fatherless from the breast. So I'm going to go take this child that's without a father, right? I'm going to take them away from their mother, and they're going to be mine now, right? Not my child, but they're going to be, the implication here is my worker, right? So they're taking these orphans as worker. And then the same thing here when he says, and take a pledge from the poor. And so, oh, you need money? I'm not going to give you money. Here, I'll give you some money if you do this, right? Sell yourself into slavery, basically, is what it's saying. So to take a pledge from the poor, that's what this is. Then it says, they cause the poor to go naked without clothing, and they take away the sheaves from the hungry. And so they're suing everything from them, right? They're taking everything from them. Jesus actually talks about this when he's talking about turning the other cheek, and if someone comes to you for your coat, he says to give your tunic also, right? So it was a great sin to take absolutely everything from someone. You could sue everything from someone, but it was culturally unacceptable to take the tunic off of them, right? To cause someone to go naked wasn't just an insult on them, but it was an insult on you. It was showing that you were a wicked person, right? And so when Jesus talks about this, that's what he's talking about. When he's saying, give your tunic also, he's saying, like, no, let them be, seen as wicked as they are, right? It's an act really of humility, but also it shows what they're doing. And so Job is actually talking to the same thing here, what these wicked people are doing. They're taking the poor to the point where they're naked, and then taking their food away from hungry people, right? That's the sheaves there. So it's like the wheat. Then it says, they press out oil within their walls and tread wine presses, yet suffer thirst. And so they have plenty, but they still want more, right? So these wine presses, right, and the oil presses, these are things that wealthy people had, but yet they're still wanting more. They still suffer thirst. The dying groan in the city. And so he makes a generalization about all that are suffering, right? They're groaning in the city, and the souls of the wounded cry out, right? So all of these people are suffering because of these wicked deeds of others. But what happens on earth? It says, yet God does not charge them with wrong. So them being the wicked people. Remember, this is from Job's point of view, right? So Job doesn't understand why the wicked people are allowed to do all of this to suffering people already. And not only do they seem to prosper, but there doesn't seem to be any justice in this life, right? And so that's the point that he's making here. He continues on with this. And he makes a good point about how this is seeming security. These things, because of our limited perception, they seem to go unpunished, right? Sometimes people die, and they die wealthy, they die well off, right? But we know that, they may be wicked people that just seem to prosper in life, right? But we have to understand that is from our perception of things. And so Job makes a good note of this, even though he doesn't understand, right? He freely admits, like, why is this happening? Why is that happening? Even though Job doesn't understand, now he talks about how this is only for a time, right? This is only it's only from our perception here. So before he gets to that, though, that's the general part of this passage. But before he gets to that, he talks about the deeds done in darkness. Okay, and so he continues on with these wicked people. We see that darkness throughout the Bible is equated with sin, right? So Do people, we talk about people robbing people in broad daylight, right? But when do people mostly do that type of stuff? At night, right? And so Job talks about three big sins here. He talks about murder, he talks about robbery, and he talks about adultery, all of which we're saying are sins done in darkness, okay? And so it says, there are those who rebel against the light, right? They don't do these things in the light. They do not know its ways, nor abide in its paths. And so this is talking about both physical light, but also like the light of truth of God, right? So this is talking about godly things, or them being opposed to godly things. It says, the murderer rises with the light. He kills the poor and needy, and in the night he is like a thief, right? The eye of the adulterer waits for the twilight. So, people that are cheating, right? What are they waiting for? Oh, they wait for nighttime, right? They wait for where they're not going to be seen. It says, saying, no eye will see me, and he disguises his face. In the dark, they break into houses, which they marked for themselves in the daytime. And so, they walk around in the daytime, right? Just like everyone else. But all during the day, they're just like, okay, that's target. And then they wait for night, and then they break in, and they kill, and they steal. It says, they do not know the light, for the morning is the same to them as the shadow of death. And so the morning is like death to them. They hate it. It says, if someone recognizes them, they are in the terrors of the shadow of death. Okay, so they abhor being in the light. Why? Because they fear someone recognizing them for what they're doing. And so now he goes on here with what should happen. Okay, so again, Job is in full agreement with Eliphaz on what should happen to wicked people. Now, Eliphaz makes the mistake of saying that these things do happen to all wicked people in this life. Job is saying these things should happen to wicked people in this life. And so he says here, they should be swift on the face of the waters. Their portion should be cursed in the earth. They should lose everything, right? Their time here should be short. They should be cursed on the earth. They should have no inheritance. It says, so that no one would turn into the way of their vineyards. So no one should want to be around them. It says, as drought and heat consume the snow waters. So nothing would be left for them. Snow melt, right? I actually just learned about this a little bit more, that this is actually a big deal in this area, right? The Kings River or the canals and stuff, the reason why they're seasonal is because we're waiting for the snow melt from the mountains. So I just learned that. So that's kind of interesting. Anyway, you're smiling at me because you probably already knew that. Yeah. I haven't lived up here for that long, brother. So, I'm a city boy. So, all right. I don't like to be a city boy, but, that's where I'm from. Going back down to Orange County was kind of strange because we go back down there and it's just like as soon as you get over to Hone, it is one big city. There's no space in between. Right? We didn't see farmland once we got past there. It's pretty crazy. So anyway, it says, so the grave consumes those who have sinned. So now he hints at what he's going to make, the point he's going to make. The wicked people ultimately are going to find justice in the grave, right? Then it says, the womb should forget them. The worm should feed sweetly on them. These are pretty extreme things here, right? He's saying they should die in the womb. They should be eaten by worms. These things should happen to them, right? It says he should be remembered no more. Unfortunately, wicked people are remembered in life, whether celebrated or not, right? Everybody knows who Adolf Hitler is. Everybody knows who the Unabomber is, right? Ted Bundy, right? Or that is it Ted Bundy, the murder? People remember those people, right? We can remember some of the worst people in history, but for good people, much less, right? And so wicked people are remembered, unfortunately. They should be forgotten. It says, and wickedness should be broken like a tree. Wickedness should be eradicated, right? It should be just dealt with swiftly and be gone. But we see wickedness continues on earth, right? It says, for he preys on the barren who do not hear and does no good for the widow. And so it's interesting, right? All of this, Job is reiterating much of the things that his friends have been saying, but his friends have been accusing Job of a lot of these things. And so Job's like, yeah, I agree. These people should face their end. Unfortunately, they don't. Job hates them just as much as his friends claim to. And then he gets now here to the point of this, that they seem to be secure. So remember the last chapter, that the key verse there, I think, was verse 11, where he was talking about how he will come forth as gold in the last chapter. So with all these trials and everything, righteous people at the end of it, either in this life or in death, will come forth as gold, right? Ultimately, we will be rewarded after having gone through those things. But the opposite is true for these wicked people. And so, verse 22 to 25, it says, but God draws the mighty away with his power. He rises up, but no man is sure of life. So there's the big but there. So he concludes kind of saying that they're, by saying that, yeah, they rise up mightily in power. Like look at, in the Bible, look at Nebuchadnezzar, look at some of these kings. They did come to power for a time. Some of them have long lives of being in power. But what is true for every single person? We're all going to die. Death and taxes. But we're all going to die. That is, whether you're righteous in life, you're going to die. And who are you going to have to face? The Lord. Are you going to face the Lord as someone who's saved and has been living, hopefully a godly life? That's what we should want. Or are you going to face the Lord as someone who's lost? Right? That's ultimately what will happen. So justice will be done in the end. So it says, but no man is sure of life. So the only thing you can be sure of is death. We are not guaranteed even our next breath. Then it says here, he gives them security and they rely on it. So you think, okay, well, God allows them to continue in their wicked ways in life, and they rely on that. But notice this. Do you think that means that God isn't taking note of what they're doing? God is always taking note. It says, yet his eyes are on their ways. And so whether we understand why wicked people prosper or not, God is watching. God is always watching. It says they are exalted for a little while, then they are gone. Okay? The little while being this life, right? Compared to eternity, this is a short time. Then they are gone. And what happens to them after they die? They are brought low. They are taken away, out of the way like all others. They dry out like the heads of grain. This is talking about their bodies in the ground. It says, and now this is his punchline to his friends here. Now, if it is not so, who will prove me a liar and make my speech worth nothing? So he's saying now to his friends, can you really tell me I'm wrong with this? You can see throughout time wicked people prospering in life. Ultimately, the short time is this life. Not, for a short time while they're here. It's the life itself is a short time. And ultimately you face judgment before God. And so, whereas righteous people ultimately when I say righteous, we have the righteousness of Christ. Ultimately, where are we going? Heaven. Right? So no matter what happens to us in this life, where are we going? We're going to heaven. Ultimately, what can happen? What's the worst thing that can happen? If we get killed, we're going to be way better off than we were in this life. If a wicked person dies in their sins, right? If they die without knowing Jesus, no matter how good of a life they had, where are they going? Hell. And so justice ultimately is found in the end. And so that's Job's whole point with these two chapters, that in this life we seem to not understand God's ways, but we do know that at the end justice will be served. All right. Let me go ahead and stop.